Hello, I'm Lew Steiner, publisher for Atlantic City Weekly. We're here today at A Time for Wine at Caesars in Atlantic City, and we're getting ready to speak to Frank J Ferry, Esquire, the author of Nucky. Why did you decide to write the book?
Well, I had heard stories about Nucky Johnson all my life, and I had read his book, which he wrote in prison with John Stoneberg, called Boardwalk Empire. And I asked Marie Boyd about the book, who was Nucky's secretary for many years. And Nucky always told her, and Floss particularly told her, that the book, there's a lot of fiction in there because Stoneberg, who was his co-author, was trying to exaggerate facts so that to try to sell it and glamorize it. And after I read that, I didn't know what was truth or fiction. And I thought I'd better do his book because people wanted me to do Senator Farley's book, and I said, well, I better do Nucky first. And then I started going into the original records. Since I had been with the Department of Justice, I knew which records were available, and I was able to get a lot of the good records. His parole application from the FBI, his investigations of him through the different departments, Internal Revenue Service investigation. He appealed his conviction, so I knew there was a transcript available, and I had his whole transcript of his criminal trial. And there was he sued David Niven later on in his life and the Saturday Evening Post for libel, and he succeeded in that case. And I was able to get the complaint and his deposition, and David Niven's deposition, which his attorney took in Italy, and a series of things like that that gave me credence to what he actually was like and what he actually did.
How did you first meet Nucky Johnson?
I first saw him when I was about 19 or 20 years old. I was in a club in Atlantic City called the Cotton Club. It was a black nightclub. With a group of my friends, and we were watching the show, and all of a sudden the lights went on, and Nucky Johnson was standing there with two beautiful showgirls, and everybody in the room started clapping and mentioning his name, chanting his name, and before you know, it was like a rock star was in there. And we didn't know exactly who it was until people started mentioning his name. And I've heard stories about Nucky Johnson since I was a kid, raised in Atlantic City. And you couldn't help but like him. And the more I researched his background, the more I found out how much people really did like him in the area. He's very generous throughout his life. He helped so many people when no one else could help him. In his early days, there was no welfare, there was no Medicaid. There was no food stamps or disability, and he took care of all those needs for people, and he did it on a regular basis. So even though he had funds from the gambling and prohibition and all those sort of activities, people didn't resent that because he shared so much with the local people. And generally he was very well regarded by the old-timers I would talk to over the years.